In case you are not familiar, just off the top, with the holiday classic Home Alone, it is a gritty horror film in which two innocent cat burglars, simply trying to make a living in this economy, spend Christmas being terrorized by a sadistic 8-year-old before he finally stops toying with them and gives up and just calls the police. Sound familiar? Home Alone is, in fact, the classic John Hughes flick, starring Succession's Kieran McCulkin and his less famous older brother. It is the simple story of a family that heads off to celebrate Christmas in Paris, mistakenly leaving the youngest child, Kevin, home alone. And little do they know, two burglars are, in fact, targeting their house as the silver tuna of all their break-ins over the Christmas holiday. So it is up to Kevin to not only fend for himself, but to protect his family's home. And meanwhile, his mom, Kate, is cajoling strangers to get back to him by Christmas morning. The movie is a flashback to a simpler time when there were no cell phones and people could afford a house like that, when gate agents didn't count the number of boarding passes and you could actually make it through airport security in under 45 minutes. But despite being a flashback to a simpler time, it is a film of enduring appeal. And one reason, I think, is that it sets the bar for being a good parent catastrophically low. Almost every parent I know thinks they could be doing a better job. Even if their kids are generally happy and safe and well-adjusted, they think that they could be doing a better job, that there's something out there that all those other parents are doing that they're not doing. Even though in reality, and maybe deep down, we all know that those people over there are also just trying to do their best and not getting it right all the time. And when you feel like that, what is more reassuring than thinking, well, at least I have never left the country with my child abandoned in my house, right? Even the band leader in the film, played by John Candy, and all the dads in his polka band, who are all terrible, have never done that. The worst, he says, is he left a child in a funeral home all day, and the kid was fine. 6 or 7 weeks later, he started talking again. So Kevin's mom feels like the worst parent ever. And John Candy may not understand what she's going through, but you know who would? Joseph and Mary. Because our actual gospel reading today reminds us that Joseph and Mary lost Jesus. They lost the Son of God, the Prince of Peace, the Alpha and Omega, the light in the darkness, the King of Kings. God Emmanuel just went missing. Imagine how they felt. Halfway back home by donkey, looking around, like, have you seen the Messiah? Imagine how they felt scouring the streets of Jerusalem only to just find him at home doing fine in his Father's house in the temple. The gospel is the good news that you do not have to be a perfect parent. You just have to try your best. Look at how much Jesus loved Mary and Joseph, who he probably never forgot lost him at one point. It is the good news, in fact, that you do not have to be a perfect Christian or a perfect person for God to love you. God loves you already. God just wants you to try your best. At Christmas, we remember that the Bible is not full of perfect people. It's full of flawed and broken people desperately trying to follow God's way of loving kindness. And at Christmas, we remember that God doesn't stay away from all those unworthy folks who don't deserve time and attention. Instead, God arrives to spend time with them, to be with them, to hang out with them, not to love them from afar the way we might love somebody that we don't really like very much, But God wants to be with us, with all humanity, so much that God does the theological equivalent of staying awake for 60 hours on a plane from Chicago to Paris to Dallas to Scranton to the back of a U-Haul van to come be a part of your life. Christmas reminds us that the gospel story begins with God's love for us, not with God's wrath. And you will also notice that when Jesus was found by Mary and Joseph, he was in the temple, just chatting it up, having conversations with the adults, astounding them with his knowledge. This week, this scene reminded me of Kevin, like right at the end of the movie, when his parents are shocked to discover that he had gone to the store and bought milk and eggs and fabric softener. Kids love this movie, I think, in part because it's about facing your fears, going from hiding under the covers and running screaming from the furnace to tricking and fighting off the bad guys. It's a reminder for all ages that you don't grow up simply by getting older, or even when circumstances ask it of you. You grow up when you choose to grow up. And yes, part of Kevin's growing up process is that he constructs an elaborate series of violent booby traps for the burglars, which even as a kid I found much more believable than the idea that he cleaned that whole place up in one night. I mean, all those feathers and all that broken glass? No. So I had a version of this sermon, which was an in-depth exploration of the ethics of nonviolence in light of the power differentials between Kevin and the burglars here. I will spare you that. I also had the really great idea that I could use all the booby traps as like a sermon illustration to explain the ransom theory of atonement, which basically says that like all human beings belonged to Satan, but then when Satan claimed the life of Jesus, who was God incarnate, that Satan overstepped and all were ransomed. Augustine describes this as like the mousetrap that God set for Satan. It's a whole thing. Colin talked me out of that one, so I will not subject you to that. Instead, I will admit, yes, it is a little awkward to preach the gospel of Home Alone in a church committed to nonviolence. But I don't actually think the violence is the point of the film. After all, I mean, it's only like 20 minutes at the end, right? The point is that the kid has all the power. In all the scenes where Kevin is raining mayhem down on Marv and Harry, they're scared of him rather than him being scared of them. And kids don't usually get to feel powerful or in control. But this movie just gloriously flips the whole world upside down. Kevin eats junk and watches rubbish. He jumps on the bed and runs around in the house and sleds down the stairs, which is awesome, by the way. Instead of the world we know, where kids often have to be scared of adults. Kevin is dropping paint cans on them and hitting them with a blowtorch. It's not really saying that violence is the answer. It's a picture of a world where the suffering innocents do not need to be afraid because everything has been switched around. It is a great reversal of what we in church might call the sinful spirituality of violence and domination. It's an echo of Mary's great song in Luke 2, the Magnificat. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. Should remind us that Jesus did not come to earth because God just had to kill someone. Jesus came to earth to flip the whole world upside down so that the last shall be first, and in so doing free us from the cruel inclinations of our hearts. God came to be with us, and nothing can stop that. From Christmas to cross, nothing can stop God abiding with us. We are not alone. God always walks with us. We are always bound together in God. To me, Home Alone is a movie about wishing you were alone, thinking you're alone, maybe believing you deserve to be alone, and then slowly discovering you are not alone. The Kevin we meet at the beginning of the movie, he wants to leave behind the family that annoys and traps him. He says when he grows up and gets married, I'm living alone. But that Kevin, that's kind of like what modern life promises us. If we just cast aside our past and our grand stories and our mythology and our superstitions and our traditions, if we cut ourselves off from people and we maintain our independence and we make it show we're not dependent on friends or family or community or anything but ourselves and the almighty dollar, then yes, we can be free. But Kevin, in this movie, discovers that the only real freedom is the freedom to be for others, to be unabashedly for others, to be in relationship with others. That is not how we lose our freedom, that is how we find it. Home Alone is a beautiful story about forgiving family, but it is also this meditation on discovering that relationships with others are what makes us human. The beating heart of this movie, which is why we read this clip today, for me, is Marley, the neighbor. And it seems that Kevin and his family and maybe even his parents, they're too scared of Marley to get to know him. Fear of someone stops them from being in relationship. And fear of his past mistakes stops Marley from being able to reach out to his own family. It makes him afraid to call his son to patch things up. At heart, then, it is fear. Not reality, just fear. Fear of others, fear of the darkness within ourselves, fear of our past defining our future. That fear convinces us that we are, or always will be, or should be alone. In that scene, sitting in church with Kevin, Marley says, "How you feel about your family is a complicated thing. Deep down, you always love them, but you can forget that you love them, and you can hurt them, and they can hurt you." And those words are true about families. Everyone here knows that. And those words are also true about every single one of our relationships. Our relationships with our coworkers, with our friends, with the people around us, with our church community, with God. We forget that we love them, and we hurt them, and they hurt us. But deep down, we are tied together, and we know it. Deep down, we love them, even if we're afraid to admit it. Deep down, we know how easy it is to forget to love people. We forget that we love others, we forget that we love God, we hurt others, they hurt us. We call that sin in our tradition, and we laid it all upon Jesus on the cross. But the good news of Jesus Christ, the gospel, according to Home Alone, is that God's love mends the frayed edges of our hearts. That God rushes to be with us and calls us to show kindness to strangers. That God calls us to forgive others as we are forgiven. That God reconciles and relationships and heals this broken, beautiful world. So every Christmas we are reminded that we are created to be at home on God's good earth, but we are never home alone.